Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. We're just going to wait a minute or two more for a couple of people to join, and then we'll get started. So please hold and get yourselves ready. Thank you. Whilst everybody's waiting, if you do have any questions or you want to post some comments into the chat window, please feel free to do so either now or throughout the presentation. We'll be keeping an eye, picking up on any comments that people make, any questions, and we'll do our best to answer them as we go through. So feel free to start posting some questions. Okay, I can still there's still quite a few people joining, but I'll get started now. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining. Welcome to our Lunch and Learn workshop this afternoon. My name's Stuart Dorman, and I'm joined by my colleague Tom Mullen. We're both from DVELP, which is the innovation practice here at Sabio, and we're focused on the use of next generation technologies and agile approaches to help our clients to solve customer experience issues with AI and the latest communication platforms using technologies from partners like Google and Twilio. As I mentioned earlier on, please feel free to post any questions or any comments in the chat window. Obviously, we're doing this remotely, given the current times. It's, we want to make sure we got as much interaction as possible. So make sure you engage in that if you can, and ask as many questions as you possibly can. Now, I'm really excited by today's session because we're going to be building something from scratch in 30 minutes that will show you how quickly you can deploy AI in your contact center to reduce call volumes. Now, what we probably should have added to this title is that we want to enable you to reduce call volumes whilst improving customer service. Clearly, anyone can reduce call volumes by hanging up on customers or putting them into long queues, but clearly that's not great for customer experience. That may reduce calls, but it's going to deliver a terrible service. But unfortunately, quite often that's what we're doing today. And it's particularly the case, in today's unusual times where many of our customers' contact centers are suffering either high call volumes or reduced staff, or a combination of those two things. So what we're going to focus on today is show you how we can use AI to greet the caller, to ask why they're contacting and understand what their intent is, and then to start to build up a model that enables us to understand the intent, match questions to the customers that the questions that customers ask, with a view to helping us to start manage call volumes more effectively. Now, managing call volumes could be that we offer a much more accurate routing experience to reduce transfers. It could be that we play the customer some really simple information. It could be that we fully automate a transaction, or at the very least, we capture some information or we verify the customer in order to pass that information on to the agent to allow them to have a much more productive call. And we see this technology as really key to unlocking better service and greater digitization or automation on the voice channel. Now, I've been working with this, in this industry for many years now, and previously deploying self-service often took many, many months. The cost was high. We worked to fixed scopes, but we're in a very different world now. We can leverage this technology and build things very quickly, which is what we're focused on today. And really, the problems that we're trying to address here are these perennial problems of trying to focus on reducing the time that it takes a customer to solve their problem. Often today, customers experience high transfers. They have to wait for a long time to get through. They're put on hold. Really, it's an unforgivable waste of their time, and we want to try and deploy technology that helps to solve that. The second challenge that we see is the fact that innovation often seems out of reach or unrealistic, particularly in the world of contact centers. The pace of innovation has been quite slow over the last few decades. And often we find that people have lost faith. They see investing and innovating as very high stakes projects, only really available to the largest contact centres that require large investments and so on. We want to try and tackle that with this new technology. And the third thing is around the agents themselves. We see agents wasting time on repetitive and low value tasks. So much of their time is just spent on simple things like authenticating the customer and trying to understand what they're calling. And we need to look at agents as the incredibly valuable resources that they are, and allow them to focus their time on creating value and solving problems and stripping away all these low value activities that take place within a call, as well as providing them with really easy to access tools and valuing every second they spend. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to introduce my colleague Tom, and we're going to start to go through a workshop and a live demonstration how from scratch we can leverage tools from Google and Twilio to allow us to build experiences for customers and very quickly get them up and working and live. So Tom, welcome. Thanks for joining.
Hi Stu, thanks very much for the introduction. Just a quick further introduction from me, Tom Mullen here, CEO at DVELP. We have recently become part of the Sabio group and very excited to really kind of work with a broader customer set and bring some of these technologies and practices to that. One of the things that we wanted to show you today is how quickly and easily we can start to use some of these new technologies and leverage their flexibility and scale to bring some of those higher level solutions to your contact center, both quickly and effectively. It looks like we've got close to 80+ people on the webinar. It would be really great if you can say a quick hello inside of the chat bot, just to get a bit of a feel, a bit of engagement with you guys. We're going to, throughout the conversation, be asking you to take part. So if you could also just take your phones out, we'll be requiring some people to make some calls in. But first of all, if you could just say hello to us in the chat. I can't see anybody saying hello, but if you are, keep going. Okay. So first things first that we're going to do today is just introduce really the technologies that we're going to be using to be able to actually show you how to build this capability within your contact center. The aim is to be able to get a working solution, albeit relatively basic, up and running in the next 30 minutes. So the key tools that we're going to be using are, first of all, Twilio. We've got a pre-configured Twilio project. There's nothing special about it, just a vanilla Twilio project. If you want to go and create your own, you absolutely can do after this session. They'll give you a bit of credit to have a play around with, and it's lots of fun. It allows us to really leverage some of the underlying infrastructure and technologies that they've built on top of the traditional kind of PSTN and telephony layers to give us a very API-based approach and kind of future-forward approach to building telephony and contact center solutions. The next part we're going to be using is Dialogflow. So we've created a very basic, again, vanilla Dialogflow agent to walk you through this process, ideally kind of from the very beginnings. Dialogflow is also a free tool to begin with. I urge you to go and create a free one at the end of this session and have a little bit of a play with it. Dialogflow actually provides us with the natural language capability, so it encapsulates some automatic speech recognition, text-to-speech, as well as intent-based modeling. These are the kind of key requisites that will be required to be able to build out an automated solution in the contact center. So first things first, we're going to need a phone number to be able to call in on. Today we're going to be working under the pretext of a parcel delivery service. Let's call it Bob's because it's easy. I'm sure it's something that everybody is relating to at the minute, with all of the shops closed and an increase of Amazon and any other deliveries that you're receiving to help life be a little bit easier under the current environment. So we'll be building out a bit of a solution that will show us how we can handle some of the queries and analyze some of the customer questions that a parcel delivery service might be handling at the current time. So first things first, we're going to buy a phone number. Twilio allows us through their super network to easily purchase phone numbers. We will simply click here to get a new one. And we're going to want one with voice and maybe SMS for future use. Let's find a mobile number. You can search for this and it should bring us up a list of phone numbers. Very good. So we've got a list of phone numbers there with some capabilities of voice and SMS. We're just going to take the first one. And as simple as anything else, we create by, and that's it. We've got a phone number that we're going to use for the demo. So first part, the telephony layer done. We're just going to configure this quickly. So we've got a TWIML app, which really just points to a URL in the background that connects the phone number to the underlying infrastructure, which joins Twilio and Dialogflow together.
So whilst you're doing that, Tom, I guess it's for those that aren't familiar with either Twilio or Google CCAI, I'm sure that these tools are being used quite extensively already, either by your R&D teams or your innovation teams. Not necessarily familiar with the operational contact center people, but certainly something that I'm sure will be well known by many of your developers and R&D teams.
That's right. And I think, again, one of the key things that we really need to stress is the ability to get up and running very, very quickly and also go and have a play. There isn't a huge overhead in getting these things started, and it really does help to enable kind of rapid adoption. So what we need to do now is actually associate that telephone number through some configuration with the Dialogflow agent that we've created and build out some other configuration that will allow us to specify a little bit about what the customer journey should sound like as we go through this process. So this platform here is a kind of custom solution which provides a deep integration between Twilio and Google CCAI. And it allows us to really define some key things to the customer journey. So the first thing that we would do is go and define a text-to-speech profile. So this is what our customers would hear from the synthesized voice when they speak to our automation, so our automated flow. We've created a basic one, just a standard one here, but we could choose any one of the Google WaveNet or standard voices through this profile. The second thing is to actually take the service account and authenticate the Dialogflow agent. In order for us to do that, we would typically go into the settings within the Dialogflow agent, and in here we can link to the service account. We would get a key file, a JSON key file, and then we can upload that into the platform here so we can authenticate against that Dialogflow agent. So very, very simple. We've already done this ahead of time just to save a bit of time, but it really is as simple as putting in the project name and then uploading the key file that we get given. The final step in the process is to join these things together. So to take the text-to-speech profile, what the voice will sound like, to take the Dialogflow agent, so what the conversation will flow like, and then associate that with the number that we've just purchased. So we've pre-created an automation profile where we've assigned the Dialogflow agent and selected the text-to-speech profile. The one thing that we need to do is add the new phone number that we just bought. So if we click on voice there, we should be able to find the phone number, which I believe is this one, and we should be good to go. So Stu, do you want to put a very quick call into that phone number just to make sure it's working okay? And then we can get all of our participants to make a quick call, and they will, then we can show them how we'll build out the intents to actually greet the customers that we'd expect.
3 4 3 5 8 3 8. Okay, I'm just calling that number now.
Hello, how can I help you?
Hi, it's Stuart. Okay. Yeah, I got an answer.
There's no intent. Perfect. So what we've done there is we've actually bought a phone number, we've set up a Dialogflow agent, and we've configured the two together. And within I suppose, a couple of minutes, we actually have an end-to-end solution that allows us to start building automation. Now, before the audience makes a phone call and starts interacting, I think it would be worthwhile for us to just talk them through the intent and show them how we can configure that welcome message. So the first one is the default welcome intent. These are basic intents that are created when we build our initial dialog flow agent. I'm going to go in here and just have a quick look at what these entail. So I'm going to skip to events and training phrases. This event here will be triggered on the initialization of the phone call. So when the phone call comes in, it knows that this event is going to be fired, and it's then going to play back one of these responses. Now, these responses are very generic and aren't going to be very helpful for our customers. So we can remove those and add in something specific. So we'll say, good afternoon. Welcome to Bob's Parcel Delivery. Now, Bob's is very, very busy at the moment because they've got lots of parcels out and their contact center is totally overwhelmed, and they have no other option right now than to just tell people they're too busy and can't handle the calls. We have very high call volumes.
I think this is one of the first things as well, Tom, that that's probably different about this approach, is this ability to be able to on the fly make changes to announcements and prompts. I mean, traditionally, this would have required somebody in the call center to re-record, or ideally, you would have had to go to studio, which can take many days or weeks to get updated. Whereas obviously with this approach, we can do this on the fly using text to speech.
That's right. So what we've done here is we've created a custom response to say, welcome to Bob's Parcel Delivery. We've got very high volumes right now and we can't take the call. Please call back later. The other thing that we've done is we're actually going to start to control from within intent, and we've provided some parameters which come as part of the integration between Twilio and Dialogflow to be able to hang it up. So we're saying, okay, we're going to hang the call up now because there's nothing else we could do. So I would like you to do, if you're in the audience and you do have a phone free, please give that number a quick call.
So I've just, for those of you that can't see, I've just published the number into the chat window at the bottom. I'm hoping I've typed it incorrectly. So sorry, I haven't. 07723 435 838. There we go. I'll call as well to put a call through.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Bob's Parcel Delivery. We have very high call volumes right now and cannot take your call. Please call back later.
Okay, great. So hopefully everybody else would have had the same experience there. Now, what we ultimately want to be able to do with this technology is to start to understand why people are calling us with these high call volumes and really start to identify where there are opportunities for us to be able to automate away some of that traffic. So it might be through improved call routing, it might be through some deflection, whatever that might be. It's really important for us to understand exactly what customers are saying and then to be able to categorize it and build an intent model around it. So instead of just hanging the call up, what we're going to do is allow customers to actually tell us why they're calling and then route that call on to the contact center. So we're going to say, good afternoon, welcome to Bob's. Can you please tell me why you are calling today? So this could be to organize a parcel to delivery, to see where my parcel is, which is probably the most common one. And what we should be doing then is taking the utterance that we capture after the initial intent and being able to analyze that for future use to be able to build out subsequent intents in the model. What we've also done here is knowing that when people tell us what they're phoning for, we're going to not have an intent that will categorize it, and we're going to capture it in a default fallback intent. Now, what we don't want to do at this stage is capture that information and then just put the phone down. So we're going to set up a very, very basic contact center. It will be massively overwhelmed because there's only me being able to answer the phone, but you should be able to see at least the end-to-end flow. So in order for us to do that, we need to just enable a little bit of fulfillment, and all of that fulfillment is doing is simply telling Dialogflow that when that default fallback intent is hit, it's going to escalate the customer through to a router that we've pre-specified. Now, the routers are set up in the configuration panel as before, and they just allow us to specify exactly where the call is going to go at the point of escalation. So in this case, we've decided that it's going to go to task router and to the main team, which should in theory be me. Now, if we can all make that call again, Stu, you're included, what hopefully should happen is it's going to ask you for what the reason for calling. We're then going to capture that and show you a little bit how we can analyze that. We should also see is you would start to hear some hold music, and a number of calls should come into the contact center here. So Stu, do you want to give that one a quick call as well?
Yeah, I've just put the call in now. So I muted myself out while I was doing it. So here we go. There we go. That's
okay. So
Michael.
Lots of people coming in,
okay.
Totally overwhelmed. There's absolutely no chance I'm going to be able to answer all of those calls. But again, this is more just to illustrate how easy it is for us to get from pretty much zero to a natural language powered solution that's allowing us to capture information from the customers and ultimately route it. Now, we're not doing any intent-based routing because we don't have an intent model defined just yet. So that brings us on to the next step, being able to actually see what was being said and allow us to start to pull together those initial utterances. So we can see here one or two. I'd like to know where my parcel is, missing parcel, delivery status, where's my parcel, got the wrong parcel. Okay, so there's a bit of a theme here already. We're getting pretty much real-time analytics from live customers interacting with our phone lines, and we're starting to be able to see trends. And what we're going to be able to do is use those trends to then identify what we should build out next to be able to serve our customer needs the easiest. So the idea of this flow is really to start to be able to provide self-service, or to be able to at least reduce the call volumes or dependency on the agent by providing greater context. So it looks like where's my parcel is going to be the one that we focus on. So let's go ahead and just build an intent for that particular flow. So very easy for us to do. We're going to create a new intent and we'll call it where is my parcel. Easy. Now, the training phrases bit, this is where we'd actually add in training phrases, which allow us to tell the underlying natural language processor what training phrases this intent should be fired for. You would typically go through a process of adding maybe 15, 20 of these, but given we don't have a great deal of time to get this working, we're just going to add a few. The result of that may be that when we try it again, the phrases that are actually triggered might not be fully trained, and therefore the wrong intent might be fired. So where is my parcel? We typically try and choose an array of vocabulary.
So while you're doing this, Tom, I mean, I guess there could be thousands of different ways that somebody might ask the same question, where is my parcel? We don't necessarily have to list every single version of that here, do we? We're just giving the model some idea of what people might ask to train it, and then it will adapt based on, you know, the statistical relevance of that question and whether it thinks the customer's asking for this particular intent.
That's right.
And I guess
so
the other,
you're absolutely right. We don't have to fill in all of the phrases.
No. And then for just to be clear, an intent really is just a reason for the customer calling. So quite often, you know, you might start at quite a high level, as we are here, where is my parcel? But very quickly over time, as you learn more about what customers are asking for, we can gradually build more and more intent and get more granular as to the reasons for people calling. And if we look at, you know, Marks and Spencer's as an example, I believe they've got upwards of 1,000 different intents. Is that right, Tom, for people calling?
They've certainly got an awful lot of them, yes. The exact number we can ask the M&S team. But ultimately, yes, what we do is use an iterative process to be able to go through identifying the intents and then creating the relevant training phrases. And it really is an iterative process. So we have to go through kind of the analysis, training, further analysis and training. And it's not a process that necessarily stops, simply because customers will start to interact in slightly different ways. The value that they find in the service might change. There may be macro or micro factors which will change which intents are getting fired and how people are talking about those. But I think the key thing is the tools really allow us to do that very, very quickly and react at a pace that allows us to deliver kind of real-time solutions to our customers without having to wait for a long feedback loop of many either days, weeks, or months.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to just save that while it's working, and then we would create a response. So what we'd ideally do is have to have some kind of identification for the customer, and we can say, no problem. First, can I take your postcode? Okay. So now we're starting to build out a very basic conversation that would start to look like an automated journey. At this point, we don't necessarily have to aim for full automation, but what we could be doing is collecting information that would then be passed into the agent when the call arrives there. So again, just to alleviate some of the average handling time constraints and alleviate some of those menial tasks that they might otherwise be having to do themselves. So ID&V, package lookup, things like that are really good opportunities where we don't have to necessarily aim to fully contain the call, but we can have a significant impact on agent productivity.
So I guess by fronting all of this information, Tom, we can, as you say, we can reduce the handling time because we're reducing the need for the agent to ask lots of questions and verify who the caller is. But I guess also because we're getting those intents at quite a granular level, we can be much more targeted about who we route the call through to. So if there is a specialist in where's my parcel, for example, or some other process, we can actually route the call directly to them without necessarily having to, you know, route the call in and that agent to transfer it to someone that does know how to resolve the issue.
That's right.
While you're doing this as well, Tom, so you're building out this idea of a postcode here. Can you tell us a bit about, you know, how the system knows what a postcode is or what a date is or any of these other types of entities that we can collect?
Yeah, not a problem at all. So one of the key objects within intent modeling DVELP is the intent itself. Another one is entity extraction. So being able to identify key entities within a natural language phrase. That could be anything from a postcode to a driving license to a time or a date or first name, for example. And what it allows us to do is specify that information and be able to extract it for form filling or any other API lookup that will allow us to start to build dynamic flows with our customers and dynamic journeys, and ultimately get to that point where we want to have fully automated and contained flows based off dynamic data that is very relevant to that customer at that given time. So what I'm doing here is just adding some more training phrases that will handle the response of the question, can I have your postcode, identify that as the intent, and ideally extract the postcode from the utterance. And I wish I knew many more postcodes off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm. I'll give you mine, Tom. TQ9 6LZ, if that helps.
I'm going to not type it in properly just in case that this video is shared too widely.
I shouldn't have announced that live, should I?
It's all right.
Whilst we're on, a question that's come through here about can inputting the phrases be automated with time, or any new phrases similar get automatically added to the intent list?
That's a really good question. So right now, we don't have a fully automated way of training the model. There is required a human API per se that needs to be able to understand the phrases and what intent they are mapped to. Actually, we don't have to go through and manually type those phrases out, but we can do training through the training module inside of Dialogflow. One of the kind of deeper CCAI pieces of functionality is called topic modeling, and the aim there is to actually identify trends within the customer conversation to recommend new intents and improved ways of training the model, i.e. where phrases may or may not have been specific to a given intent and should be moved somewhere else. Another key approach is actually empowering the contact center agents to be able to train the model. So creating a really end-to-end feedback loop that shows the intents that were mapped during the automated conversation, and if they're incorrect, allow the human agent to be able to manually correct those. So it gives us kind of virtual agent training at scale using the existing knowledge and know-how of the people in the contact center to be able to help improve it. I think anecdotally, one of the things that we talk about is we should really view these virtual agents as members of staff. We wouldn't expect a member of staff to be able to cover a whole array of business questions, and we certainly wouldn't expect them to do it without any training. So from a design point of view, we'd typically say to try and keep the agents themselves relatively refined and acutely defined in what they can and can't do, and make sure that the time and training is really invested, and also take that process relatively slowly and iteratively. The last thing that anybody, human or virtual, would want is to be thrown in at the deep end and hope that it works. The aim is to build confidence through the process, so taking small steps to be able to get there.
Great, thanks, Tom. We do have another just question whilst you're doing that as well, Tom, around the number of phrases needed as a minimum for each intent.
Yeah, so we typically recommend around about 15 phrases, but it will vary on how many intents that you have and how close together those intents are. So typically as the models get bigger, we tend to have collision of intents. So more and more training phrases will look the same, and to be able to really differentiate on the key parts of those, you require a larger corpus of information.
Thanks.
So what I'm going to show you here is we're going to handle the response. So we've got a multi-turn conversation, and then we're going to actually end with sending the customer an SMS. So we've assumed that they've given us a postcode that we've recognized, we've identified where their parcel is, and we're saying that it's out for delivery today. In order to actually do that in the real world, we would require to go through fulfillment and make a API call into a database to look up that postcode and then find out the status of the parcel. That's very much outside the realms of what's achievable in 30 minutes. So this is just to give you a bit of a flavor. And I think one of the key things that we wanted to really clarify as well, if there's a greater appetite to look at what the next steps would be, so to go a further level of advancement from this initial webinar, we'd be very happy to set that up and even create a bit of a series of webinars for everybody to learn and go through that process with us. So we've created this postcode capture intent. And the next thing that we're going to do is just handle the response yes or no as to whether they would like to receive an SMS. So Google provides us with some templates that we can use for follow-ups. In this case, we're going to use the yes and no one. So we'll just click yes. And what this does is it actually pre-populates all of the training phrases. It also gives us this context, which means that this intent will only be fired once that context is present, and it won't accidentally be fired at any other time during the conversation. So what we're going to do here is actually wrap up the conversation for them because we've assumed that we've given the customer their response. So we're going to say, okay, great. I've just sent you an SMS with the details. Now, a key aim of a kind of design aim is to be able to allow semi-technical people to actually build out this conversation and manage the communication interface, both the journey and the channel that the customer is being talked to on. So what we have the ability to do here is define an action which is going to send an SMS. And we can specify right here what that SMS is going to say. Again, if we use the UI, then we are limited to using static data. If we wanted to make the response in the SMS dynamic, we would be able to use similar parameters, but we'd have to use some fulfillment, and that would require a little bit of custom coding. Not very much at all. It's probably an hour or two's worth of effort to be able to do that and to get that SMS actually sending dynamic information about the customer. Okay, so we're going to say, hi, this is Bob's delivery or parcel. If I can spell that, help. Your parcel is due to be delivered today between 4 to 5 p.m. Okay, very good. And we're just going to handle the no scenario as well. I think because this is the end of the conversation, we're going to want to end the call here as well. We don't necessarily want to get them to escalate to an agent, but what we could also do if we wanted is ask a follow-up question to say, I've sent you the SMS with the details, would you like to speak to somebody? And then equally handle that follow-up question and ultimately escalate them to an agent. We've already shown you how easy it is for us to escalate calls to an agent, so we're just going to end the conversation here. Thank you for calling Ops today. And to hang up the call, we'll do what we did before and just enter that parameter set there. Now, finally, we just want to handle the no. So if they didn't want to find any more information about when the parcel is going to be delivered, they may say no, and we're just going to have to handle that too. So we'll create another follow-up intent for no. And relatively simply, we can say, no problem. Thank you for calling Bob's today. And similarly, we will do hang up. Oops, true in there. What we have inside Dialogflow is the ability to actually test this through the console without having to go through the telephony channel. So what's really important from an infrastructure point of view to understand is the aim is to be able to build the customer conversation in the intent model once and for it to work across multiple different channels. So ideally it would work across voice and any asynchronous messaging service. And that really does allow us to rapidly iterate and then test that in real time in the console here. So we're going to say hello because that's going to trigger the welcome intent. And we're going to say, where is my parcel? No problem, take your postcode. So okay, so it didn't understand my postcode because I haven't added sufficient training phrases. Let me see if I can just get it to do that by telling it I'm giving it my postcode.
Whilst you're doing that, Tom, there's a question that's come through, which is about, recognition of postcodes. The question is, do we have to add each postcode manually, or, could we not recognize the format and do a lookup?
Yeah, very good question. So we have the ability to specify regular. So a postcode is a really good opportunity for that because there is a predefined set of postcodes that exist within the UK. Inside of Google as well, they also have some system entities, so first names, last name, dates, things like that, where there's a lot of variance in what the entity could potentially look like. You have the ability to specify that. Similarly, if you have an order number, a waybill, or an account number that follows a particular format, we have the ability to write a regular expression and look for that specific format. Now, as you can see, I've just gone through that flow again, and because I was a bit more descriptive about what my response was, then it's going through the process. Now, because I'm not actually engaging via a phone, then it wouldn't be able to send me an SMS because it wouldn't know where to send it to. If I was doing this over the phone, then it would know that the number I was phoning on either is SMS enabled and therefore try to send it, or not enabled and wouldn't. So I'm just going to say no. Okay, no problem. Thanks for calling Bob's today. I haven't adjusted the text for the different channels, but we have the ability to specify responses based off the channel that the customer is interacting with us on. What I think I would like everybody to do is just go through that process now, give it a quick call, and if you can go through and say, where is my parcel? When it asks you your postcode, if you can tell it my postcode is, and provide a made-up postcode because we don't necessarily want to collect all of your information, and then you can decide whether or not you would like to receive an SMS. And what you should hopefully see is not only have we very, very quickly been able to spin up some analytics, so we have very deep insight into why customers are calling us and actually seeing in real time what they're saying and how they're saying it to us. I'm like somebody's trying to find my sausages, very insightful. And also start to build out an automated conversation and to be able to manage the channel. So through the process, we've escalated a call to the contact center. We've also been able to hang up a phone call. And if you go down the happy path and request an SMS, we've been able to deliver a notification for that particular part of the journey. And I believe we're probably about on 30 minutes. So please, whilst you're on, give that a quick go. Stu, if you want to give it a quick go. My expectation is that a few of you will probably get to the postcode entry and it won't necessarily recognize what you're saying. And that would just be because of the limitation of the number of training phrases that we've created. As we go through the process, we obviously would want to create many more training phrases to get the intent matching accuracy higher. And that can be done through the training module here. So you'll be able to start to see how people are actually interacting. And I can already see that lots of people have been interacting with our service. So by all means, give that a quick call now for 30 seconds, and then we can share with you a little bit more detail of where we've used this technology before to great effect. Also, how we would typically recommend that you would go about taking this from a very brief demo into a production environment, how we could potentially support with that, and followed by a bit of Q&A.
Thanks, Tom. While we're doing that as well, just the quality of the voice, the text-to-speech voices that we're seeing these days is incredible, and it's advanced massively, even over the last year or so. Where do you see this developing, Tom, in the next 12 to 18 months?
Very good question. I have had the I've had the ability to work with some of the brand new voices which are not yet publicly available, and I think the larger challenge that we're going to see is businesses will be actually asking to make the voices sound more robotic, so their customers can more easily differentiate between what is a human, what is automated speech. I think the level of accuracy that we're going to be able to get to within the next 12 to 18 months will be absolutely outstanding. And I think that it will present a lot of other challenges around how we handle customer journeys, how we start to inform people that they are actually talking with an automated solution as opposed to a human. I think right now, whilst the text-to-speech voices are really very good, it is still relatively easy to discern between that and a human voice. I think that will change, and I think kind of voice user interface design will become increasingly prevalent. I equally see in the very near future that brands will start to own their own voice persona, and we'll probably see a proliferation of that through not just the phone channel and in the contact center space, but also across all of the other voice channels, whether that be your home assistant or on your mobile device. So actually having a brand specific voice that people will instantly be able to recognize, that will help solve some of those challenges that voice interfaces currently pose for us.
Thanks, Tom. And another couple of questions coming through here. One is around are there any limitations on Google in terms of their support for languages?
Very good question. The Dialogflow support for languages is pretty vast. I don't know them all off the top of my head, but a quick Google will tell you exactly which languages are supported. Now, it's worth mentioning today, we just talked about the virtual agent part of the conversation, but the other key area of Google CTAI is what is referred to as agent assist. So that's being able to provide automated assistance through AI during the human-to-human conversation. The reason why I mention that is because the technology is extremely exciting and really unprecedented compared to everything else that's going on in the arena right now. And secondarily, there's a bit of a differentiation between which languages are supported for each of those two use cases. So the virtual agent piece, which is largely powered by Dialogflow, has very, very good language support. The agent assist piece, which has a slightly different processing engine, has a slimmed down language support. I think it supports Spanish, French, and English, but I would have to double check on that for you.
Yeah.
I think what might be a nice follow-on, Stu. It's certainly easy to find that information. I think what might be a nice follow-on, if there's some appetite, is we can go a little bit deeper into the broader product set of CCAI, including some of the analytics. So what we've seen here today is really just a very kind of brief insight into how we can handle customer utterances, intent categorization, but we have the ability to really go quite deep into this analytics package to really understand exactly what's going on in the conversation and use this as a fundamental tool to be able to build a solution for going forwards, including live listening to the call recordings that have been captured throughout the process. So the aim is to provide our customers with a very, very easy interface to quickly get up and running and start to be able to deliver information and real meaningful customer journeys through automation to their end customers.
It looks like there's pretty desperate sausages out there.
Yeah. So I can see that a few things here, people are actually entering the postcodes and going through the process. I can equally see in the message logs that a number of SMSs have been sent out, so people have got through the happy path. Really, again, what we wanted to show you today was a very, very brief taster into what is possible in a very, very short period of time through these technologies. So to recap quickly on what we've gone through there, first things first is we created a new telephone number. So we leveraged Twilio's super network to be able to very quickly buy a new mobile number to interact with. We then created a little bit of configuration in the process to be able to map that telephone number to the underlying Dialogflow agent through our configuration here. Inside of Dialogflow, the first thing that we did is provide a message to our customers to tell them we couldn't handle their calls after that, we opened it up to actually capture an utterance from them that we could then analyze through the analytics package. And also we forwarded those phone calls into Twilio Flex, which is a contact center interface. And it's now worked out that I couldn't handle any calls, so it kicked me offline. But as you guys saw, a lot of calls came in, and ultimately that could have been real agents in a real life scenario, working from home or otherwise. Following on from that, we went through and created a bit of a happy path flow. So we identified one of the key intents that people were interested in is finding out where their parcel was. And we very quickly created a where's my parcel flow that would ultimately provide them some information about where their parcel is and help to remove some of the volume going through to the contact center. So that pretty much wraps up the demo for today. As I said, this is really the tip of the iceberg, and there's lots of other component parts that we could talk about, from the configuration through to conversational design, through to managing these at scale, through to different routing capabilities and capacities. So I think it would be really great if we could canvass a bit of opinion as to whether people would like to see a further episode or several further episodes in the series, and if there is a topic or several topics which are of particular interest, we can help to really build some of the content to cater for that as well. So just to wrap up, we're going to go back to the slides, and there's a bit of a case study that I wanted to talk you through where we've actually done this in the real world. So we're very, very privileged, and I hope one or two of them are on the webinar today, to work with an incredible team over at M&S who were really, just looking back retrospectively, miles ahead of the game when it came to these technologies, and have been using a similar approach to what we went through today for a number of years in a production environment at very, very high scale. I think the key aim that the team there wanted to achieve is they had some real issues with routing and people calling all of their stores and asking for things that simply couldn't be delivered by the people on the floor in the store. It was taking up a lot of time for them, and they wanted to find a better solution that wasn't currently available through a DTMF IVR, which largely then to people just hitting the 0 and getting through to somebody to speak to then find they had to be transferred. So they hypothesized that they could use these technologies to be able to solve the problem, and ultimately that's what they did. So we managed to really transfer all of the call volume over to these technologies and massively impact the call routing accuracy and start to identify areas for automation and kind of automated call handling and a little bit of deflection where required. So hopefully you can see some of the stats over here. I think the whole project was really testament to the team and their approach. So having a very agile process and really living by that through the project, and then also what the technology allowed them to do and how quickly enabled them to get there. So an incredible journey, and I think really a great validation of the approach and the technology that we just walked through with everybody today. If you are interested in learning more information about that or any of the particular challenges that they faced, I was heavily involved personally in that project, so I'd be more than happy to ask. And somebody said something really nice about us. Chris, a great guy, and he was very kind in his words. So the last thing before we open up the floor for a bit of Q&A is just to help you understand how we would go from this initial demo to actually getting something into a production environment and starting to see real business benefits from it. The first step is we're very personal people, and we really believe in cultural alignment when we engage with customers. So we'd come and spend some time with you to really understand what your problems are and identify how these technologies can help to solve those. What's really important to understand is that these technologies are incredible, but they do have limitations, and being able to identify that and be clear on that at the beginning really helps us to make sure that we're going down the right path and going to be able to deliver the value that's expected. We'd go through a process of workshops and technical deep dives to really make sure that we've fundamentally understood the challenge and that this approach and these technologies are going to be able to help. We like to do proof of concepts or small proof of values where we can actually choose a very limited set of hypotheses to go and deliver against. The aim of that is not just to prove the technology fit, but also to make sure, again, that culturally and procedurally we're talking about the same thing and have the same beliefs to be able to move forwards. After a typically successful proof of concept, we'd look to then productionize it, so identify some of the pain points that we will face in going through procurement or any other processes that might otherwise be a little bit onerous through the process, and that will include some technical due diligence as well, making sure that the solution is fit for purpose at the scale that's required. That typically isn't a problem for the underlying platforms, Google and Twilio, but there are for some infrastructure things that we just need to be aware of as we go through the process. Again, we're really very happy to talk to you in more detail about what that looks like, and we'll provide you with our email addresses at the end of this session so you can get in contact directly with us. I think what would be really great now, Stu, is if you want to open up the floor to a bit of Q&A, and if anybody has any questions, we're obviously more than happy to answer them.
Sure, we've got quite a few questions coming through here, actually, Tom, so I'll just pick on a couple and put them forward to you in the last few minutes. So one question was around cost. How much does it cost to deploy this? Now, I know historically, this would have been incredibly expensive and taken many, many months, if not years, to deliver the kind of capability that you've just built in the last half an hour. So how would we cost something like this?
Yeah, really good point. I think historically a lot of effort was required to what we would call get to the value line. So a lot of infrastructure and plumbing is required to actually be able to use these technologies and be able to iterate very quickly through the process that we've gone through today. Clearly, all of that effort has largely been done, and what that means is we can focus on actually adding value to customers quickly. In terms of the cost, there's two really things to consider. So we have the consumption layer for the underlying technology platforms. I think it's not worth going through this in detail right now, but we can certainly share some indicative prices for consumption, which will largely vary based off how large the volume of customer contacts that we're dealing with. And then there's the professional services element. The professional services element, typically would look at this on a 10 to 12 week engagement, and we would work with you to iterate through the details and actually understand what you would like to achieve within that 10 to 12 week process, and start to work through it iteratively with you. Again, depending on the scope of that, the cost would vary, but we'd be transparent at the beginning to make sure that we really understand exactly what we're aiming to achieve and what the indicative associated costs are. So the short answer is they will vary on a case-by-case basis, and the most sensible thing for us to do is to talk to the people who are interested in that, and we can share some examples that would be a fit for their business, and also look at what the business value is. Clearly, these solutions have a cost with the implementation and then ongoing maintenance, but I think the key thing that we should focus on is the value that can be extracted from them.
Thanks, Tom. And then another question here around how easily we can integrate this into existing infrastructure, such as, telephony platforms, CRM systems, etc.
Yeah, very good question. Again, the M&S case study is a really good example of how we managed to work alongside an existing infrastructure to be able to give them a seamless solution end to end. So they were using Genesis as the agent desktop inside of the contact center, and we were able to integrate this process relatively seamlessly into that existing infrastructure. And that's really the aim as well, to choose the best way to be able to do that. We saw today was an end-to-end Twilio solution with Flex being the contact, but identify and understand that people that in their contact will need to be delivering both calls and content to via Genesis or any other kind of incumbent solution. Really, we're here to be able to help you do that. Again, we've got a very strong focus on spending time above the value line, so trying to find the path of least resistance to be able to get the solution in quickly and as commercially viably as possible, to then really focus on building this journey, deliver value to customers, and also help to deliver business value.
Thanks, Tom. I'm conscious that we're out of time now, so I just want to thank everybody for joining. We hope you found this session useful. If you've got any more questions, and there were quite a few that we couldn't get through on the panel, please email either myself or Tom, stu@develop.co.uk or tom@develop.co.uk. We'll get back to you as quickly as we can. We're happy to arrange, more demos or a deeper dive into the technology if you're interested. Thanks again for joining, and we look forward to catching up with you again soon.